in the edited Tzichi, it's quoted, but the Rebbe said those words exactly. Those words exactly. Zocha dereinu, adereibish at memanig ben abal bechira. Was mitzad atzmei the shlei be'erach anshe ador, ot memanig ben shefet hadeir und yeyetz hadeir und navi ador. Those words the Rebbe said just the way they're written. Right? Okay, today Sunday, Rabbi says Ches Elu. Hey, Tov Shimpei Beis. So we're learning Tanya. Okay, we're learning Tanya. We're in Perikov Beis, chapter 22. What page are we on? If you need a page number, we're on page 54. That would be Daf Chav Zayin Amud Beis. And we're learning about Klippa. What can I tell you? We're learning about Klippa. I guess the purists would call it the pathology of Klippa, meaning the process by which Klippa comes into being. Okay, now of course the point is, everything comes from Hashem. There's only one God, right? You know that. There's only one. Everything comes from the same Eibishter, both what we call good and we call evil. What the Torah calls good and what the Torah calls evil, they all come from one God, from one Eibishter. And of course there's a number of levels in this. On the highest level it's Ein Eid Milvade, everything is God. On a little bit of a lower level, it's Havaya Amalei Kalel. When evil does its evil thing, it's attributable to the Eibishter. The Eibishter is behind it, right? But we're not learning about the causes of evil. We're learning about the process. There's a Kabbalistic process by which evil comes into being. Hashem creates everything. And from the perspective that the world exists, there's two basic levels, as I explained to you at length last week. There are worlds that exist that express God, that are godly worlds. We call them worlds of truth. And then there are worlds that exist that express self, something other than God. And we call them worlds that are not true. Sheker. Olam emes sheker. Heipacha emes is sheker. The opposite of true is false. They're untrue. And the Alter Rebbe is explaining to us the process. So the magic word, just tzimtzum, right? What does tzimtzum mean? Hashem hides. He hides the more, so the less emerges separate. That's how you would explain it, right? Hashem conceals himself so that what we experience, even though he created it, and not only he created it, but he actually created it from himself, emerges as something which is separate from him. This is called the process by which the Eibishter creates Klippa. So last week we had a class on this subject. What I want to do now is repeat last week's class. Just going to read and translate. That's how I'm starting. It's not going to take long. And after I repeat and translate, I'm going to explain. Okay, so let's begin on Daf Chav Zayin Amud Beis. It's the second line from the top of the page. Okay, and we're right in the middle of a conversation. V'kol kach govru v'otzum ha'tzimtzumim. The tzimtzumim, that means the diminutions, the contractions of divinity, of godliness, is so great and so intense. V'hester ponim al yonim, and the hiding of the supernal countenance of the face of Hashem. Ad Hashem hides and hides and hides until sheyuchlu lihishaves ulihibodes. It allows for the creation and the emergence of gam dvarim atmeim, things which were spiritually impure. Now, if you were here last week, you know that probably 65-70% of last week's class was dedicated to the word tumah. And I don't know if you see what I'm doing. I'm teaching you Tanya the third time. I started teaching Tanya 30 years ago, so I'm not expecting everybody to remember. We're learning Tanya here in Beis Medrash and Nashim Banas 3 times. And as I teach, I learn, obviously. You never finish learning. And throughout our limud, there are certain things that I'm focusing on this time around because of my own discoveries. And one of them is where the Alter Rebbe uses the word tumah. So we spent a lot of time last week talking about the word tumah. And I guess to summarize last week's discussion on tumah is very, very little bad. It's just a drop not good. That's already not good. That's the use of the word. Tumah does, like you said, it's impure. It's not big and gross. It's just not tahara and it's not kedusha, and therefore we use the word tumah. Or klipes, and things that have appeal that covers over their inside, which is God. V'sitra achara, and things that are the other side, meaning they're not bottled to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And these two words, klipa and sitra achara, we will delve into at length when we get to chapter 24, Perek Chav Daled. We already did it in Perek Aleph, but we're going to do it again in Chav Daled. Ulekabel chayusam b'kayum, that they receive their life, and they receive from their existence. Midvar Hashem v'ruach piv, from the words of Hashem and from the air of His mouth, that means from the sounds and from the amplification of those sounds as they come forth from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in such a way that there's hester upon Him. It's the concealing of the divine countenance, it's the concealing of the divine face, v'yiridas ha'madreges, and descent through the steps, so that the Eibishter Himself, using His own koiches, kvayochol, produces something that should be on one level or another level anti-Eibishter. Who's responsible for all the trouble in the world? The answer is the Eibishter. Period, the end, full stop. Adosidus, the Eibishter. We're not discussing the why, we're discussing the what. The why is discussed in a lot of places. Here we're discussing what is the mystical process, the Kabbalistic process by which this occurs. And let's continue to read. Which is why we refer to those creations made by Hashem, but made by Hashem in such a way that it exists, it's dependent upon Him, and yet its reality is in one way or another the denial of that dependency. We call them Elikim Achedim. And the way we translated it in Chassidus, Elikim Achedim doesn't mean other gods. Elikim Achedim means the Eibishter with His back turned. That's why we don't say Elohim Achedim. We say Elikim Achedim because Akim means the Eibishter. Achedim with His back turned. The process by which Klipa emerges has a number of steps which I'm going to be speaking about soon. But the idea is that the Eibishter makes it, and He makes it from Himself, and He makes it by Himself, and He sustains it every single moment. And yet it exists in such a way that it allows for Tumah and for Klipa and for Sitra Achara and Elikim Achedim and Avodah Zarah, because the Eibishter makes it with His back turned. Mipnei, because sheyinikasam v'chayusam, they nurse and draw life. Einam bebechinas ponim, it's not from the face of God. Elam bebechinas acharayim, from the rear, from the behind, the kedusha of holiness. Right? What is the connotation of the face of God versus the rear of God? It's called in halacha mafaisei, right? If you give a person $1 who's hungry, he can buy breakfast. It's not that much money, $1, right? But you can't buy breakfast for $1. Give a person whatever you need to buy breakfast. So you've given him something. It's not a lot, but it's something of. It's not giving him a nickel. You're giving something that he can purchase, something that's going to sustain his goof. But in halacha, there's a category called hamafaisei. Hamafaisei means that along with the money, you give him genuineness. You give him your concern. You show him that you care about that you love him, and that his poverty, his dependency hurts you, and that you're supporting him. Like I tell you the story last week, I just love to tell the story how Mrs. Pekarsky told me herself. Nisha Pekarsky told me that she came to America and they had nothing. They came early. They came in 46. Most of the Lubavitchers came in the 50s. They came very early. And she literally went door to door asking the Davis. She was a woman of infinite dignity. You know, there's two ways to look at it. How difficult it must have been for a woman with such class to do this. That's one way to do it. Another, she had enough dignity to know if this is what you need to do, this is what you do. And that's what she would say. And she came to Gordon, to Yechanan's Rebbitzin. Her name was Zissel. Right, something like that. And she gave her an adava, whatever she didn't have a lot of money herself. And she said, "Dank for kommen beten." Thank you for asking. In other words, I wouldn't have known. But those words, "Thank you for coming to ask," was so much more than I wouldn't have known. It was partnering with her. Your plot is my plot. Your plight is my plight, and I'm happy that I have the opportunity to be able to assist. That was the feeling that she repeated it to me to bring out the point of what it means to be gentle, kind. Yeah, that's called an halacha mafaisei. And the Gemara says, the Rambam brings it. There's 8 miles of tzedakah, And one of the biggest milas is that you give a person tzedakah and you show them that you're partnering in their pain, you're partnering in their dependency, you're partnering in their neediness. And that's called panim. So you can only buy breakfast. It's the same dollar or the same $5. You can only buy breakfast. But what it does to the person's heart makes it an entirely different experience. And then you have acherayim, you give the same breakfast, but you do it without any love, without any gentleness. Right? Let's continue to read inside. Upirash acherayim. The meaning of acherayim is ka'adam aneisen davar l'seina. You're giving something to someone that you hate. You don't want to do it, but you need to do it. So you throw it to that person over your shoulder. You turn your face away because you hate them. The breakfast is exactly the same. The breakfast is exactly the same. If let's say that it cost $1 to buy breakfast, the person who gave them the dollar with a smile, the person who gave the dollar with a frown, is the zelbe breakfast. But you can't compare the two gifts. When you're talking about the Eibishter, it's a very different. When the Eibishter gives you $1 with a smile, he's giving you himself. And when he's giving you $1 with his back turned, he's giving it to you in such a way that it's cut off, it's separated from himself. And that's how we understand the difference. The Kedusha and Klippa, it's not so much how much he's giving, but how he's giving it. If he gives it Bebechinas Ponim, he is connected to the gift. If he gives it Bebechinas Acharayim, he's disconnected for the gift. And he continues. Kach Lamaila, the same is true in Elokus, that Bechinas Ponim, who the face of God means Pnim Yisrotz and Elyon V'Chavtei Amiti, the innermost will of God, and his true desire. Girls, women, ladies, Rebbetzins, these 5 words, Pnim Yisrotz and Elyon V'Chavtei Amiti, are the code of the next chapter, of chapter 23, where he talks about Kedusha. In Kedusha, everything comes from the Pnimius, Ratzon, the Elyon, V'Chaftem, the innermost, the face of Hashem. In other words, whatever he gives us in such a way that we're attached to the giver, to him. Asher Chofetz Avayda, the Eibush, the desires, Lashpi Achayis, to provide life. L'chol HaKor, if you love all that are near to him, may sit on the Kedusha from the side of holiness. And holiness means bittul, like it says in Tanya chapter 6. As opposed to sit to the acher on the other side. And things that are not pure. Literally, the abomination of God that he hates. He creates it, he needs it, but he doesn't want it. So he's involved with it, is ambivalent. His relationship with it is mixed. It has to exist, but his relationship with it, that it only exists for a secondary reason, it by itself is not good. And therefore the Eibush does not give her klipa life, the innermost will and the faith and the true desire of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that you should think that he wants it, God forbid. But rather, like one who throws over his shoulder to somebody that he hates, against his wishes. So the Eibishter creates klipa, because klipa needs to exist for the reasons we're about to say in one line, 1 minute. But he doesn't like klipa. So his investment of klipa is with his back turned. He throws it over his shoulder. So that's the same dollar. But it's disconnected from the source of that dollar. So why does he make it if he doesn't like it? And the answer is, in order to punish the wicked. Let's seek him to give good reward to the righteous. Because the achafel said to the achara, by creating good and evil, the Eibishter created free will. By creating free will, we can contribute, we can be partner with him in the creation, we can actually make choices. And we make a good choice, it's a good thing. If we make an undesirable choice, a negative choice, it's not a good thing. So it punishes the wicked and it rewards the righteous, who ben klipa. And that's why klipa exists. This is called the rear or the back of Ratzon Elyon Baruch Hu, the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because Hashem gives it life. Hashem is sustaining it in a way that is separated from him. I read this last week. I read it again. I translated it last week. I translated it again. Maybe I tweaked a few things today that I didn't tweak last week. Last week we spent a lot of time on these few lines. I just want to talk you through some points, some structure, okay? There's really two ideas that have to be said, but I'm going to break it down into more than two. The two ideas are, and if you want to write this down, this is a good idea. The first is called the Ribui Tzimtzumim, which means many contractions. And the second is called Acherayim, that he turns his back. Klipa comes from Kedusha. Klipa comes from the Eibishter. But it goes through what we call a Seder Ishtasus, an order of a chain reaction of worlds, from a higher level to a lower level. The two basic inyonim that are necessary for Klipa to exist is, first of all, Ribui Tzimtzumim, which means that the life that reaches Kedusha is always very small. Ribui Tzimtzumim means it's very reduced. Hashem gives Klipa very little life. Now, very little life doesn't necessarily mean Klipa. Very little life can mean Kedusha on a low level. But very little life is the first component in setting up the emergence of Klipa, as I'm going to explain to you in a few moments, I hope. I plan to. Okay? So the first thing that is necessary for Klipa to emerge from Kedusha is that the Chayes Eliki is very, very reduced. That's number one. And number two is called Acherayim. He turns his back. And it has to be in that order. First of all, that the Chayes that reaches Klipa is very little. And second of all, the little bit of Chayes that Klipa gets, it gets in such a way that it's disconnected from the giver. The Eibush that gives Chayes to Klipa in such a way that it's disconnected from its source. And this combination allows Klipa to exist. It draws, Klipa is basically an obnoxious child, right? Everything he has from his parent, and all he does is complain. All he does is criticize. All he does is be contrary. Why? Because he's ungrateful. Why is he ungrateful? Because he's not being forced to be grateful. Why is he being forced to be grateful? Because it's not in his face. The Eibush gives Chayas to Klipa, so first of all, he gives him a little bit of Chayas, so you don't feel how strong the source is. And then second of all, Acherayim, he turns his back. One without the other is not enough. One without the other is not enough. What would happen if you had the Ribui Tzimtzumim and not Acherayim? If Hashem would reduce the Chayes Eliki to a small trickle, but he wouldn't turn his back, it would be Kedusha. But it would be Kedusha on a low level. What would happen if you had it the other way? The Eibusha turns his back, but he's giving a lot of Chayes. We have a name for that, by the way. When the Eibusha gives a lot of life, but he gives it in a way that's disconnected from him, we call that Olam HaToyu. Have you heard of Olam HaToyu? Olam HaToyu is Ein Safe in Evid Avachadai. Olam HaToyu is godliness without bittul. That's what it is. Olam HaToyu is a world which cannot be sustained. It shatters, it breaks, it's unsustainable. There's an enormous amount of godliness, and there's no bittul. And the reason there's no bittul is because the Eibishter creates Olam HaToyu with all of its incredible light in such a way that he's not giving himself. So you have to have both. And in this order, you have to have Ribui Tzimtzumim, and you have to have Acherayim, in order for Klipa to be able to exist. Otherwise, Klipa doesn't work. Those are the two most important components of what the Rebbe is saying here. The Rebbe is saying it. The first thing he says is, V'kol kach gavru v'otzma tzimtzumim, that's Acherayim, that's Ribui Tzimtzumim. And then a few lines later, he adds the idea of Elakim Acherim, but you see, in other words, what I just read inside, I just told you orally. Point number one, Hashem reduces the amount of light that's coming from a higher level to a lower level. And point number two, in addition to making the light very small, he turns his back. And by turning his back, the Klipa does know that its source is the Eibishter. That's what it's able to be. It's a lift from the Eibishter and, so to speak, deny the Eibishter. Now let me throw this in for fun. Every rule has exceptions, right? The only rule that doesn't have an exception is the rule that every rule has exceptions, right? Every rule has exceptions. If you've learned Chassidus, you know that there's another model, which Alter Rebbe is not talking about here. And the other model is like it was before the Mabul. Before the Mabul, the world was unbelievably blessed. Right? It says in Chazal, Hanechov vov kili elam chazde keneged mi, keneged chov of dedet shayinizenim mechasde shal HaKadosh Baruch Hu. On Shabbos morning, before Baruch Sha'ama, we say what's called the Halal HaGodl. Heidel Hashem Kitev Kelim Chazeh, Heidel Kelim Chazeh, right? There's 26 of them. And it's written inside, Yud Kei Vav Kei, with comments. And as a little child, I used to pronounce those until my father told me, no, you're supposed to look at them and not say them. So the Gemara says, what is the 26th Yelielim Chasdes? It goes in the 26 generations. Moshe Rabbeinu is the 27th generation. Because from Adam till Noach is 10 generations. Noach till Avraham is 10 generations. Avraham till Moshe is 6. Moshe is the 7th. Chalash V'yin Chvivin. Moshe got the Torah. When Moshe got the Torah, the idea of Schar V'Einesh, that you get what you earn through Avodah, is fully implemented in the world. And until that point, the Eibishter was just being kind. Or like it says in the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, Kama Erech Apayim Lefonov, right? Erech Apayim sounds like Arech Ampin. Remember Arech Ampin? It's the same idea. It comes from Kesed. Kama Erech Apayim Lefonov, Arech Ampin. The first 26 generations, before Matan Torah, and certainly before the Mabul, Hashem gave them His largesse without any qualification, without any conditions. And this is called the Rib Makav Ha'elyon. That there's a source that Klippa can live from, which is not by the Lakus being reduced, which is called the Rib Tzimtzumim, but it's called Makav Ha'elyon from here's an English translation which is as useless as the Hebrew. Supernal indirectness. Makif means indirect, Elyon means supernal. Supernal directness, how there's a level of godliness which is very, very high. But its relationship with you is called Makif. The expression that supports this is the Lashon HaPasuk, Kachashecha Ka'oira. In the Ein Sof, darkness and light are exactly the same. It's a pasuk, Kachashecha. In the Ein Sof, darkness and light are exactly the same. We use this pasuk in more than one way. But one of the ways we use this pasuk is infinity. Infinity, right? What's infinity? Infinity is everything with no conscience. Infinity does not have a spirit, doesn't have a direction. One of the rules of infinity is that it's not finite. Right? If it's not finite, it doesn't have any discretion, there's no judgment. So infinity doesn't decide what's good. In the realm of infinity, either everything is great or everything is terrible. There's no in between, there's no judgment. So it's called Chitzonius HaKesed, or Arich Ampin, Erech Apayim, Makif HaElyon, where Kedusha and Klippa are the same because at the level of infinity, nothing matters. Nothing at all matters. There's something called Pnimius HaMakif, which is even higher than that, where even though it's not logical, the Oyev as Yankev as Esav Sanesi, I love Yankev and hate Esav, but there is a concept that Klippa gets chayis from a very, very high source. It's infinite chayis, because to the Eibishter everything is the same. It's all nothing. It's all everything or it's all nothing. And that's how Chassidus explains when you see Klippa have unbelievable success. Like Sanchered Melech Asher, they bring this example. When you see in evil fantastic success, how could Klippa be so successful? And the teretz is because they're getting from Hashem's Ein Sof. But normally you say in order for Klippa to exist, it has to be reduced. And the answer is there's another model. There's another way Klippa lives. Klippa can live what's called higher than Ishtalshlos. Kachashecha Ke'erem. Makif HaElyon. But the Alter Rebbe here doesn't talk to that at all. He doesn't. Why? Because that was a long time ago. Before the Eibishter gave the Torah, there was a kindness of the Eibishter which was without discretion. So Klippa and Kedusha got exactly the same, because the level of infinity, everything is the same.
Don't you see today that Klippa is very powerful?
Okay, but this conversation is a good one and a worthy one, but I'm going to ask you that we're not going to have it now. Okay? The other model is that Klippa gets from the end of Kedusha. That when Kedusha exists, and particularly when Kedusha exists and Kedusha is strong, so the bulk of the energy goes where it's supposed to do, but if it's reduced enough, and the Eibishter also turns his back, this is where Klippa lives. It's called the Ribetz and Sunnah. And there's a whole build of Maimonic Hasidus that revolve around these two ideas of Klippa getting from infinity and from Klippa getting from the very, very reduced Chayes Eliki. In this Perek, the Alter Rebbe only speaks to the second idea. So I mentioned the first idea, just so I should not feel guilty that I missed something. But it's not the point. Here we say Klippa gets from the bottom of Kedusha with his back turned. What would happen if one without the other? Acherayim, without the Ribet Tzimtzumim, is Elam Atayu. Elam Atayu knows God very well. But it's not bottled to the Eibishter. It doesn't serve him. So for something to truly be in denial of the Eibishter, you have to have these two ideas in this sequence. First of all, the chayes has to be very little, the life has to be very small, and second of all, acharayim, the Eibishter turns his back, that allows for klipa to exist. But there's more. That's just, those are the two basic points, but there's more. And I'm now going to share two more words with you. There's probably going to be more than two, but I'm going to share two more words with you. I'm saying them preemptively. In other words, what I'm going to tell you now is in the next few lines, till the bottom. We're 10 lines from the bottom of the page. Yeah? What I'm going to tell you now is going to be said inside in the next few lines, but I'm going to tell them to you first, and then with Hashem's help, we're going to learn them. Okay, what we did so far, as far as we're concerned, is we talked about the idea that for klipa to exist from kedusha, you have to have first of all libet tzimtzumim, and then you have to have what's called acherayim. But there's two other ideas that are also brought. The third word that we want to use is the word makif. Makif means hidden. That's what makif means. Makif literally means surround, right? I like to translate makif as indirect, available indirectly. But in Tanya it says that makif means hidden. And this is how Chassidus explains it. Chassidus explains that after these two steps, there's another step. In addition to the fact that the Eibush is chayes to klipa through the Tzimtzum. In addition to the Eibush chayes to klipa b'derech ha'cherayim, there's a third step. The third step is that even the little bit of chayes that klipa gets from kedusha, the chayes is separate from the klipa itself, which means that somehow the Eibush arranges that the little bit of life that comes from kedusha to klipa gets it without experiencing its source. The way this plays out is that it says in Kabbalah, and you may be familiar with this already, that kedusha always goes in the number 10, and klipa always goes in the number 11. And the reason klipa goes in the number 11 is because there's a concept that the little bit of chayis that klipa gets from kedusha, the klipa doesn't even know its own life. In other words, it's receiving life from the Eibishter, but it doesn't know where this life is coming from. The mashal for this, and this is only a mashal, but it's a mashal, is what's called in Kabbalah Gilgul. Gilgul. There's Gilgul and there's Ibor. What does Gilgul mean? Gilgul, in this case, doesn't mean reincarnation. Gilgul means a misincarnation. For example, if you take the neshama of a person and you put him into the body of an animal, it's called tzad. You put a neshama of a human being into the body of an animal, the neshama has a lot of pain because he can't express himself. The body of the animal is not able to hold the neshama of a human being. So the animal is alive, but the neshama, the human soul inside this animal, experiences terrible pain because the animal is alive and has no concept of what kind of life is inside of itself. This is a third step. That the little bit of chayas that klipa actually gets, the klipa, the embodiment of the klipa does not know what its life is. So in addition to ribet tzimtzum, and in addition to acherayim, there's this idea called makif. Klipa lives from a source and has no idea what its source is. To say it in a Gashmizdike example, and it's only a Gashmizdike example, everybody feels alive. Human beings feel alive, animals feel alive, and perhaps you could say even plants feel alive, but certainly human beings feel alive. But what life is, we don't know. Where life comes from, we're not sensitive to. That's the fact. But to say it, that everybody knows they have an neshama. Everybody has an innate sense, or an inherent sense, or an inner sense, or a basic sense, that they're not living because of chemistry and biology and electricity. They're living because there's something called life inside of themselves. But what life is, they're not aware of. Life is only from one source. Life is God. Life is God. And when you live from the Eibishter and you don't know you're living from the Eibishter, this is called makif. You don't know your own source. But to say it in slightly different words, the fundamental definition of life is eternity. The fundamental definition of life is that it never dies. Life never dies. Bodies die. Souls don't die. And when you're living and you don't know where your life is coming from, this is called makif. Which leads to a fourth word that I want to share with you, that we're going to be reading about momentarily. And that fourth word is the word golus. Golus, exile. And all of these terms are used in this Pedic. And I'm sort of trying to structure them in order. Number 1, Ribi Tzimtzumim. Number 2, Acherayim. Number 3, Makif. Number 4, Golus. What's the meaning of Golus? Golus means exile. What's the definition of exile? It's very, very simple. You take a person, you put him in jail, and you lock the jail cell. That's not a prisoner yet, right? It's only a prisoner when you take the keys and you walk out of the room. The definition of a person who's in Golus, he's trapped in a situation and he doesn't have the ability to redeem himself from his own situation. In the expression of the Gemara, Ein chovush matir es atzmei mibeis ha'asurim. A captive, a prisoner, is not in a position to redeem himself from his own exile. Ein chovush matir es atzmei mibeis ha'asurim. Klipa has Hashem inside of itself. And it's Klipa. What makes Klipa Klipa, even though Hashem is inside of itself, in addition to Ribit and Sumim and Acherayim? The answer is Makaf and Golus. The spark of Hashem inside of the Klipa is helpless. The spark of Hashem inside the Klipa cannot redeem itself. Like a person sits in jail, and when you're sitting in jail, the definition of jail is not that the jail cell is locked, but that somebody else owns the key. And that's the true concept of Klipa. I'm stuck. I'm trapped. I cannot redeem myself from the situation I'm in. And that's the third and the fourth idea. Because Makif, the Eibishter gives Chayas to Klipa in such a way that the Klipa should not know the source of its Chayas, that Chayas is trapped. It's in Golus. It's stuck. And you know that we have this idea, of course, called Golus HaShechina. And the Eibishter complains, I'm in Golus. The definition of Golus is Pasha. The Eibishter is here with us, and we don't see him. That's his Golus Klayach. And the Eibishter could do whatever he wanted. If he wanted for us to see him, we would see him. So by the Eibishter, it's by choice, right? He's not compelled. But the concept of a Golus is that I'm stuck. I'm trapped in the Maimed Matzav that I'm in. And that's what Klipa is. Klipa is something which is separate from the Eibishter, but separate from the Eibishter in such a way that by its own devices, it cannot change it. For Klipa to be Klipa means that it can't redeem itself from the situation. You may remember, we learned Tanya 19, pay your test. Alter Rebbe said the opposite of Golus is Shina. A person who's sleeping can wake up. But a person who's in jail cannot go out of jail. Somebody else has to take him out of jail, because the definition of Golus is that I have no balabatchkeit of myself. That's the concept. Eibishter created Klipa, which means he took sparks of himself, and using these processes, these steps, Ribi Tzimtzumim, Acherayim, Makef, and Golus, he put sparks of himself in such a position that they're stuck, they're trapped, they cannot help themselves. Only somebody else can take them out of that Maimed Matzav. That's the Taich. Klipa. And that's the Pshat Birur. That's why Birur is such a big deal. A human being can come along, a Yid can come along, Kedusha can come along, and redeem it. You take that spark and use it for Avodas Hashem, you take it out of prison, you take it out of its makif, you allow it to know that its source is the Eibishter, and you raise it up. But for Klipa to be Klipa means the Klipa is trapped. The Klipa is not in a position where it's able to take itself out of the situation it finds itself in. And in Avodah, we understand what that means in life also. In Avodah, this means when we get stuck. Everybody gets stuck. You know, Mrs. Swerdlove tells the story how they were in Detroit for the convention, and they were snowed in, and they called up the Rebbe, and Benjamin Klein picked up the phone, told the Rebbe, we're stuck in Detroit. So Benjamin Klein came back on telephone. The Rebbe will verstehen what this means, stuck. The Rebbe wants to understand what it means that you're stuck. So she starts to explain it to the Rebbe as if the Rebbe doesn't understand English. You understand? He says, no, the Rebbe understood perfectly well what you said. And the Rebbe, you're never stuck. It's what the Eibishter wants you to be. You have to do whatever it is. The Rebbe told them to do whatever it was that they needed to do, and they did what they needed to do. But there's no such thing as stuck. Klipa is stuck. Klipa is stuck, and a lot of us are stuck. In many, many ways, we find ourselves stuck. In other words, when a person deals with a difficulty, some difficulties we could manage. Difficulties that we could manage are still challenges, but they're not imprisoning us. We're free to be stronger than those difficulties. Some difficulties we encounter in our lives, especially, as the Gemara says, when we develop bad habits, one of the most sinister things in life is bad habits. Bad habits are a terrible thing. Because it becomes a teva sheni. You do the same bad activity over and over again, it becomes second nature. To undo that is extraordinarily difficult. Because at some point you're mamish a prisoner. You get stuck. People get stuck in all kinds of things. People get stuck. Stuck means I've developed this pattern, and this pattern is developed ad kedei kach that I cannot see myself outside of that pattern. That's a mashal for klipa. And the redemption requires something outside of yourself. When you fall into that moment of matziv, you need something outside of yourself to redeem yourself. To just give a practical example, you have a relationship with a person. People have all kinds of relationships. All relationships start even, or all relationships start with nothing, yeah? And then there's how the relationship plays out. And some relationships work better, some relationships don't work as well. But relationships develop patterns. Two people interface, meet in certain ways. And after a certain amount of time, there's a presumption that you're going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and you're going to do this. I'm going to insult you, and you're going to insult me, and I'm going to... And you get into a position where you can't see outside of that. You develop a pattern of behavior, and you're so stuck in the pattern of behavior, you can't see yourself outside of that. You can't see yourself outside of that. That's golus. It's golus in the Eid Ampen. But the pshat is, I get everything from the Eibishter, and not only don't I see the Eibishter in this, I don't see how I can get out of it. That's the avoid parallel of golus. And of course, klipa exists. So the Alter Rebbe says for reward and punishment. But we know in Kabbalah there's a process called birur. It means to crack that shell, not to allow that stuckness to be true, to be chronic. In other words, we can reverse it. People through incredible avodah can take patterns that they have that are not good, sometimes for many, many, many years, and with support from other people or whatever is necessary, you stop being stuck. That's called redemption. It's called geula. It's taking a spark of kedusha which is trapped in klipa out of its goals and redeeming it. Alter Rebbe says in Tanya chapter 37. Why is it that Deilet Tzedakah Shemakarev Sagiul? Alter Rebbe asks the question, why is tzedakah so great that it brings the gula amitis v'ashleima? And the Alter Rebbe answers, because tzedakah redeems many sparks. That's what he says. Tzedakah, giving tzedakah, redeems many sparks, and redeeming sparks is geula. What is redeeming a spark? There's God everywhere. There's God in everything, and in klipa he's stuck. He's stuck, and this stuckness has these two criteria. Number one, makif. The way the chayas of klipa sustains the klipa, it's hidden from the klipa. And number two, galus, therefore can redeem itself. So these are four different things. They may sound very overlapping, but they're four different things. Number one, klipa to start with gets little chayas. Number two, klipa gets chayas with Hashem turning his back. Number three, the little bit of chayas that gets through, but derech acherayim, is separated from the goof that it sustains, like the mashal of Gilgal. The human body is sustaining the human soul, sustaining the body of the animal. The animal's alive but doesn't know what life inside of him is. And number four, it's trapped. It's called golus. This is a little bit of an insight into the processes, the mystical processes that explain how klipa exists. Abishah created it. And of course there's a why, there's a very big why. But at the moment we're not learning the why, at the moment we're simply learning the what. Okay, questions? Or comments? Go, but talk loud. I have to be able to hear you.
Can you spell it out how giving tzedakah releases klipa from its bondage? I don't know.
So first of all, I would suggest that you look it up the Pedic inside. And there's a website called Inside Hasidus. There's a rabbi. He's giving classes on it. He has no shame. He's self-promoter. The tenet is Azoi. The Alter Rebbe talks about money in very, very realistic terms. And he says people give their lives to earn money. People are moisa nefesh to earn money. And even if they didn't give their lives to earn the money came to them easy. But yochaliknes chaye nafshe. With money you can buy something that can literally keep you alive. So psychologically, a lot of who we are is represented by our money. I think you'd agree with that. Yeah. How much of ourselves is in our shirt? How much of ourselves is in our breakfast? how much of ourselves is in our money. Now, the argument should be made, money, all I need money for is to buy a shirt and to buy breakfast. But the way it plays out in reality is like it says in the Siddur, but nafshi yavi lachmei, our whole neshama is in our wealth, is in our money. And when we give it away, we're on some level giving away an enormous amount of ourselves. And in giving away that enormous amount of ourselves, we're redeeming it. We're giving it something, we're giving it to the Eibishter, we're giving it to a person we're doing a mitzvah with it, we're making it holy. So because there's so much of me invested in my money, so much of what I am that's trapped is redeemed when I give it away. That's more or less what the Alter Rebbe says. Does that work? Okay. I can tell you where it is. It's chapter 37 is the longest chapter in the book. Yeah. I can tell you exactly where it is. You can look it up later. Mom, I'm going to take your Tanya for a moment. It's the second half of page 96 into 97.
I don't have this one. I have less than 20.
Okay, it's fine. So it's chapter 37. It's closer to the end than to the beginning. It's not mamish the end. It's the longest page in Tanya, so it's very hard to. Yeah. It's interesting how the Alter Rebbe says it, and he explains it that way, that every physical thing has a certain amount of sparks. Money has more of us, more sparks, because of the way we earn it and the way we relate to it. So giving it away is more redemptive. In other words, he wants to explain it mystically. Why is tzedakah makarev zagula? Because it is geula. Anytime you do a mitzvah, it's redemption. You're taking a physical thing, you're making it holy. When you take money and you make it holy, you're making more sparks holy because there's more of what is us invested in the wealth, in the money.
Eating something and using it for that, more so than eating something and making a bracha, and that's not as redemptive as
Tzedakah. That's what he says. That's what he argues. I happen to agree with him. But everybody is in a different place. You can say, no, I don't experience it that way, To me, it's leitzach. You know how Chassidus talks about money? Money is lower than Gashmias. Because its only value is that you can acquire Gashmias. In other words, it isn't even Gashmias. So to make that into something which is holy is an extraordinary thing. That's how Chassidus explains Chanukah Geld. Why do you give children money on Chanukah? Because there's nothing lower than money. And you make that into a minig Yisrael. There's a certain redemptive property to this. Does anybody else want to say anything? Otherwise we're going to read a few more lines. Go ahead.
So just a very quick question. You were saying about Olam HaTorah being B'chinas HaParayim.
Without the Rebbe Tzimtzumah.
Okay, so this is just a very quick question. Sometimes you come across people who are very machshav Torah, but they don't learn Chassidus. Is that the same concept of like Olam HaTorah?
Oh, I wouldn't say that. I would say people who are machshav Torah and machshav mitzvahs and they don't have Yiras HaShamayim. That's what I would say.
Okay, that's what I mean. They forget all the
Yiras Shamayim. They forget about the earnestness of this. To be a Yid, the foundation of Ireishes HaAvodah v'Ikra v'Shorsha is Yiras Shamayim. The foundation of being a Yid is to understand that this is serious. This is not a trip. This is not an experience for fun or for pleasure. This is an earnest and serious involvement. And the symptom of that sense of earnestness is that I'm in the worst mood. And I do it anyway. I'm angry at him. I do it anyway because this is earnest. That's the foundation on which our ahava sits. And if we have ahava and we're lacking the foundation of yira, that, in my view, that would be a little bit of a mushal. It's a wilde Yiddishkeit. It's not the hardest thing about Judaism is balance. Yiddishkeit wants a little of everything. And we'll tell the Eibishter, I'll give you a lot of one thing. And the says, no. One thing is you. I want everything because everything is me. Everything means that there's part of what you're doing which is against your wishes. And in the against your wishes there is service. Against your wishes there's bittul. Against your wishes there's the Eibishter. That's what the word tikkun means. Tikkun means balance because of because of bittul. That's at the base of it. in Heilige Werte, in holy words, the difference in Elam HaToyu and Elam HaTikun is that Elam HaToyu, the bittul comes from the oir. In Elam HaTikun, the bittul comes from the kelim. If you learn the Maimorim, you see it change over time. In the Alter Rebbe's Maimorim, it says different. But over the course of the generations, that's where it plays out. What does it mean, bittul comes from oir? I'm so smart that it makes sense to me that I should serve the Eibishter. I serve him, and I serve him well, because I'm so smart that I understand how important it is. But it's all about me. So that breaks when it's tested. The Keli means at the base of me there is the Eibishter. And I have to find the Eibishter which is at the base of me and serve. So it's not coming from my strength. That comes from I could be smart. I could be many, many things. But the basis for my avodah is not how much I understand. The basis for my avodah is the service of the Eibishter. You know, the famous Rambam that the Rebbe brings. And that's true, what I just told you is actually true. The difference between Elam HaToyu and Elam HaTikun is Elam HaToyu was bottle. Because of Oyer Ein Sof. Oyer Ein Sof is a good thing. But Oyer Ein Sof is a rich thing. So the bittul is based on what it is. It's not based on its connection to its source. I was going to tell you something just now. Oh, the famous Rambam, where the Rambam speaks about Bnei Noach, about non-Jews, and the kiyum of Sheva Mitzvahs Bnei Noach, and he raises a hypothesis. If you have a goy who's very intelligent, and from his own intellect, he deduced all Sheva Mitzvahs, all of them, and of course included in all the Sheva Mitzvahs is also the mitzvah of not blaspheming the Eibishter. And he keeps all the Sheva Mitzvahs because it makes sense to him, but not because the Eibishter said it. So the Rambam, the printed Rambam say, if you keep all the Sheva Mitzvahs b'nei nech because you understand it, einoi mechasidei umei sa'elim, you're not a righteous Gentile, with a vav, v'loi mechachameim, nor are you a wise Gentile. In the Kisvayat Haman, in the Yemenite Rambams, there's a change of one letter. Instead of the vav, it's an aleph. Smart you are, but a chassid you aren't. When you serve Hashem because you understand that serving Hashem is good, it's better than not serving Hashem, but the center of it is self. That's Elam HaToyu. Elam HaTikun, the keli, bittul, offer, bittul. The deepest basis for our Yiddishkeit is surrender. You have to think about it. The deepest basis for our Yiddishkeit is to surrender. We have inside of ourselves the ability to surrender to the Eibishter. The surrender inside of ourselves is our offer, is our bittul. And the Yiddishkeit that's built on that's Kedusha. Because it's based on bittul. Anyway, so anybody else want to speak? I actually mean it. This is the time to talk to me about this. Okay, if everybody's good, I'm gonna move on.
To have bittul, I mean, it's necessary to have a proper kelim to be able to have bittul.
See, I'm afraid to answer that question because I don't know what the next question after that is. But if I don't have to answer the next question, the answer to this question is yes. So now comes the $1 million question. We're all so imperfect, right? So what do we do? Well, the answer is, we do it the best we can. That's all we can do. It's the best we can. So let's read a few lines. Shall we? 10 lines from the bottom of page 54, Daf Chav Zayin Amud Beis. Now here, understand how we're doing this. In the bunch of lines we read last week and repeated again today, we introduce ourselves to the first two of what I'm calling 4 steps. Number 1, the Ribay Tzimtzumim, that the Chayes Eliki is radically reduced. Number 2, Acherayim, that the Eibishter turns his back. And then there's number 3. Number 3 is very sensitive, that even the little bit of Chayes that gets from Kedusha to Klipa is not aware of the source of that life. And this is called Makif. And then the 4th idea is called Golus. Let's read. V'hinei. The will of God is really the face of God. Hu makar hachayis, Chayim is the source of life. Hamachayis kol ha'elamis, that gives life to all of the worlds. Ulefi, and whereas She'ene sheire klal ala sitrach. The face of God, that means Hashem in such a way that you're experiencing Him, does not rest on klipa at all. But then he says v'gam. Look at this v'gam. V'gam. Moreover, b'chines acherayim shedas nalyan. Even the chayes alaki, which goes through ribitzim tzumim, and it goes through the event of acherayim, is also einoi melubash b'teicha mamish. The word melubash means revealed. Is not revealed in the klipa mamish, meaning Hashem gives klipa a little bit of life. Hashem gives klipa a little bit of life with his back turned, and Hashem gives klipa a little life with his back turned, and klipa doesn't even know where the life is coming from. It's a third step. That the little bit of chayas that gets, so to speak, all through all of these screens. So the klipa is cut off from the klipa itself. Elamakif alehom almaylu. Literally, this means it surrounds it from above. But Alter Rebbe says in Tanya chapter 48 that in Ruchnius there's no space. So you can't speak about spatial orientation. And the Alter Rebbe translates the word makif as helim, hidden. I like to translate makif as indirect. We're living from the Eibishter indirectly. The little bit of Eibishter that finally gets through all of the funnels and reaches me is also available to me in such a way that I'm not experiencing from where it's coming. And that's the third idea, which is called makif. Lakach, which explains further why klipa is makam hamisa v'atum, the place of death and the space of spiritual impurity, uncleanness. Adeshem yishmerenu, the Eibush should protect us from it, because of all of these three ideas, and we're about to introduce the fourth. Kima'at meze'er, the small trace of oir v'chayis, of light and life, sheyinekes u'mekabelas l'teich, which it nurses and receives in her, mibechinas acharayim, the kedusha shel mayla, from the kedusha of above, which is back turned, which means you already have ribut tzimtzum, and on top of that you have acharayim. But in addition to those two things, you have a third thing which is called makif, which results in the fourth thing. And the fourth thing is hu b'bchinas golus. You see, I'm just showing you the words inside. Hu b'bchinas golus mamish b'toich, is exiled in the klipa actually, beside, according to the mystical secret of golus hashchina, the shchina being exiled, hanisgadol le'el, which was mentioned earlier in chapter 17. If I'm not mistaken, and maybe in chapter 19, but in Perek Yud Zayin, I'll speak about Golos Hashchina. Golos Hashchina means the Eibush is right here, right now. And he says, I'm trapped. Now, the Eibush is never trapped, right? His entrapment is a chosen entrapment. Our entrapment is an imposed entrapment. But the Eibush says, I cannot go out of Golos till the Yidden go out of Golos. And so long as Yidden are in Golos, I'm in Golos. And being in Golos means, quote, I can't help myself. And that's, so to speak, it's the fourth idea. It's the result of the third idea. The third idea is that the little bit of chayes that reaches klipa is also cut off from the klipa. In other words, the Eibishter creates living beings that are created in such a way where they're alive and they have no concept whatsoever of what life is. The idea that life is God escapes them completely. And it's his fault. He puts into place a series of steps to effect that klipa should come down through these points, ribut tzimtzumim, acherayim, makif, and golus, that things should live and have no concept of the meaning of life. And the meaning of life is the Eibishter. And in klipa, not only is the meaning of life reduced, and not only the meaning of life with his back turned, the meaning of life is cut off from those things that are living from the life itself. Questions or comments? What I just did was I read inside what I lectured. That's what I did. I read inside what I told you about Peh. You're sitting on a bench. So someone could put on top of your head a halo, a crown. So it's makif on you. What makes it makif on you is you're in one space, and the halo is someplace else. In Gan Eden there isn't physical space. So how would you understand that you're sitting in Gan Eden and there's a halo above you? Where are you and where is it? It's not spatially separated. It's not. It's an idea. It's not a physical phenomenon. So the Alter Rebbe says in Ruchnius, sitting has its meaning, and surrounding has its meaning. And in some Maimorim explain what sitting means in Ruchnius, and surrounding means you have something available to you that's hidden from you. That's how it's interpreted. That's the philosophical definition of the term. Questions or comments? Okay, we'll break and we'll do our Yom Yom. We'll continue the next Sunday. We're learning. It's the school year.